Hello, everybody. Good night, good day.
Peace.
uh, hey. So let's see. You guys, some of you look so tired. It's like you just woke up or something, or going to bed right now, which is justifiable. Sorry, guys, for doing this to you. So let's see. Let me just share screen here very quickly. And yes, let's see. We are so far 15, which is kind of like the number that we had yesterday. So I think you go all the way to maybe like 18, something like that. So that means like 10 people kind of cannot make it. So they probably are just watching the recordings. So today the plan is to actually start assembling a little scene because the way that I work with my personal stuff, I try to create like something that I assemble from the get-go, right? Like you put together a little scene with some lighting, and then you just iterate on that. So basically, today we're gonna be setting up like the scale of the model. Like I said yesterday, like keep everything world scale. Talk about the size and proportion of the eyes, a little bit of the rotation as well, and then we're gonna be basically like rescaling this model I have in ZBrush right now to conform to that, and then bring it back so I can continue doing my sculpting and everything, but at least it's gonna be already in world scale, right? I have a couple of books in here as well that you probably, if you don't have it yet, you should get it. I mean, those are awesome. They're not cheap, by the way. This book here, if you can see, Anatomy of Facial Expression, right? And it's a book by Oldis Zarins, right? It's the same guy who made this awesome book here that you probably know from the interwebs, Anatomy for Sculptors, right? It's he breaks down like everything. All the forms are simplified, and it's like he has lots of scans as well. It's like things like that, and he basically like shows the muscles like from all angles with schematics and things like that. It's like it's very, very cool stuff. But this one here that he just finished, like I think it was last year, the Anatomy of Facial Expression. This one has a ton of stuff covering faces and heads, and it's like facial expressions specifically, right? And then he talks about the fat pads, the differences between like men and women, the rotation of the like the eyes as well. He talks a little bit about that. There's so much to cover, it's like, especially if you're doing like blend shapes for production and stuff. It has all those facial expressions, it's like it's so well done. You can tell that he put a ton of work, and everything is deconstructed. So basically like what they do, they take a picture of the person doing a facial expression, right? And then they scan that person, and then they actually go to town, like it's like dissecting that face in the same position. So you see, you have access to everything. It's a very complete book. And then the other one is like, I know I'm sculpting like Native American right now, but if you are into that, if you want to do the same thing, like sculpt like some Native American eventually at some point, get some books from Edward Curtis. This guy, Edward Curtis, he has this awesome books. It's like, and he was a photographer. It's like a white dude. He was always like infiltrated, right? Like he became friends with all those tribes, so he was like always taking pictures of all of them. And this book here I got at Barnes and Noble. It was one of those books that they had like, it was like basket price, whatever. It was like $10. They're kind of like giving away. Wasn't selling for some reason, and I just got it. So it's a good reference as well. So just a few books in there, just for a little reference. So let's start this thing here. So you can see my screen, right? Like, yeah, it's all good. Okay, so let's start by exporting this. I'm gonna group those eyes because those are just for reference anyway. So I'm gonna click in the first one, the top one, and I'm just gonna do a merge down. All right, so at least I have just a single object in there. I'm gonna export it. So it's a little bit hard for you guys to see my screen if I have my myself in the corner there. So I'm gonna keep it like that, so probably you can see it now. So I'm gonna just click export, and just gonna send it to that folder I created the first day, like the OBJ folder inside that structure that was created by Maya, right? So OBJ, you're gonna just put like like eyes ref, something like that. I'm gonna put the number so I can track it. And then for the face itself, I mean, like I subdivided to about like, it's close to 1 million polygons now because it has two subdivision levels from that base head that we got from ZBrush, right? From the planar head, so two subdivisions. So Maya can handle it fairly well if you have just, you know, it's like under 1 million polygons should be totally fine. So just gonna export that as well. And let's do like a head ref in here. Send it as well. Take just a little bit. And then another thing I have to do is actually turn off my history. So every time I save this file, it's not going to become gigantic. It's not saving the history. So let's take a look. Oh, another thing, like someone asked me on Instagram today if I could like post like basically like the time lapse of the sculpting, even the stuff that I did after the class in the first day, right? Like the stuff that you guys didn't see, which is basically like everything that's combined in that video I posted yesterday of the time lapse, like 2 days combined, but it's sped up. So if you have interest, I can actually just like put the video that's not sped up and like put the entire session in there. It's just like to have like a little, I'm gonna do this tonight. I can put just like instead of like lesson, I can just put like a lesson 2 bonus or whatever. And then you can have the entire time lapse and then you can scrub. It's gonna be slow, but you can scrub to see. It might help someone. So let's do this. Those are basically 3 references I'm using the most, right? Like trying to combine some aspects of those guys. My face is still very flat. I still have to add some more, you know, modulate better, but we're gonna get there. So here's my Maya. And the first thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna open this file that I have prepared, which is just the eye, right? So I have the eye modeled, and I can later when we go through the whole process of like how I actually sculpt the eye and model it, I can go into more detail. Today is just like for proportion stuff, but I can show you like how I have my topology set for the eye. It's basically like I start with this sphere, a regular like primitive in Maya. But then when you start with that, you subdivide, you get this kind of topology here, right? You're gonna get a star when you start subdividing, because topology is not like, you know, it basically like it's a triangle right there. So it starts like creating this star. So the first thing I do, I actually eliminate, basically like I delete all those edges that you see crossing like in diagonal like that. And then I just connect like side to side, for example, this one all the way down, this one all the way down, this one all the way down. And then I create a grid, a perfect grid like this one, right? This is important because if you have any pinching in the middle around the, you know, it's like in this iris area here in this, in the cornea, right? Maya is going to be very sensitive. Not only Maya, any render actually. When you subdivide this mesh, you might get like some weird pinching going on in there during the render. And this area is, you have to be like a perfect with it. Otherwise, if you have any artifact right there, you don't sell the idea that's like a perfect lens, right? So you're gonna get some weirdness in the refraction as well. So the best thing is to actually make a grid like that. So basically like the change of direction in here is happening just in those corners. They're kind of like far from the center, right? And so the way I normally do this to create this little bulge in here, I normally have like one sphere that's basically like the sphere for the eyeball itself, and a smaller version of it intersecting with it, and I keep it in there as a reference. So I have those objects basically like penetrating each other as a reference for a while, and then when I do the topology, I always use them to snap back. So it's like to use like a shrink wrap and always conform to those 2 objects. And then obviously in this area here, I'm gonna soften the transition between the 2 of them. But it's always good to have like those objects always available as a backup. So at any time, if you do any change in the edges or anything, you can always fall back to it and just reproject and have like a perfect sphere on sphere version of it, right? So let's talk about the proportions in here. First thing I can do is to actually open, bring the browser in here. So let's do this. And let's start with some of this, this one. So the pupillary distance, or pupillary distance, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. It's the pupil, it's the distance between the pupils, right? They do this, I mean, like when you're baking, getting some prescription for glasses and stuff, they're going to measure the distance, it's like they have to make sure that they have everything very, very customized for you, right? So if you research this distance between pupils, you're going to come up with like some numbers, it's like again, like between men and women, there's a difference, right? Like it's normal, like men is like the distances are larger. But then you're gonna find information, for example, like it's like the average adults, popular distance is like between 54 and 74, and then kids between 43 and 58, and then obviously with depending on the genre is you're gonna have some difference as well. But I could consider something like, let's say, like between 54 and 74, you can call it a 64, right? That's kind of like an average right there. So if we have anything at that ballpark, you should be good. The thing that's interesting is that there is something about the rotation of the eyeballs as well that adds a lot of realism to the character, right? A common mistake, I'm going to show you this from the top, so you're going to see it. You can see here, first off, like the pupillary distance I have, it's 63 here. So it's in the ballpark, right? 63. So from here to here. But you can tell that the eyeballs are rotated. So like that's the pupil right there, but it's in that position because the eye is rotated. You see, like they are not like in 90 degrees. They have a little bit of a rotation. Let's see how much the rotation is. So if I go up here, you're gonna see right there, that's about like minus 2.5 degrees. And this one, another 2.5 degrees, right? Why do we have to do this? It's very common if you do like a 90-degree eye, you just put like facing, forward perfectly. It's almost like a certainty that's your model's gonna look crossed-eye, right? What happens is that, like, I always use this example. Back in the day, there was a series of books in the 90s that was very famous, like they call like the Magic Eye. I don't know if you guys remember that stuff. That's basically like it was a bunch of like fractals and like weird kind of like a very abstract little images. But then if you cross your eyes, you would see some image popping out of the paper, like in 3D, basically. You would like, pop out of it. But the thing that's interesting is that you would have two different effects. One effect would be like when you cross your eyes and you would see things almost like in the reverse version of what was supposed to be. For example, like if there is a sphere that was supposed to pop in there, when you cross your eye, you would see like a hole. That's basically like the negative version of that sphere in there. But the correct way to see that sphere would be like to create like make a diversion of your eyes. Instead of like going inwards, they would have to go outwards. And to teach you how to do that, what they would say would be like hold the book right in front of your eyes like that, right? And in front of a window. And then you would like basically like bring the book down. So basically like bring the book down below your eyes, right? And then you would focus on a point far away, for example, a mountain, all the way, it's like away from you. And then you slowly would bring the book back without changing your eyes, position. Basically like you would get used to that. And then you would bring the book back. And then as soon as you put the book back, you would start seeing the form the way it's supposed to be. So a sphere would start popping in there. So that means that your eyes are rotated slightly outwards, right? And so that's what we are trying to simulate here. When you have the eyes slightly rotated outwards, it's almost like someone is looking at the distance. It's like, so that alone adds thoughts to your character. So basically, like if you have a character that's just sitting like completely still and without any rotation of the head and without any rotation of the eyes, like kind of like following an object or something, but facing forward completely, just by adding this between 2 and 3 degrees of rotation, I keep it 2.5, you add this almost like there's a automatic thought process that's incorporated to your model. So it kind of like the model, it's kind of like looking away, it's not looking like to an object close to them. So that's a tip in there. So that one is one of the most important, I think, like to add this, thought to your character. So it adds a lot of life, right? Other than that is obviously like how we're going to sculpt it, the depth of it we're going to get with refraction, the amount of reflection, all that stuff is going to add to the realism of the eyes. But this is a very important one. In terms of proportions for the eyes themselves, again, like talking about averages, the average size of an eyeball is about 24 millimeters. So that means like 2.4 centimeters, right? Like for the size of the eyeball. And the size of the iris itself, it's half of that. So that means like if you have the iris in the middle here, you're gonna have half of an iris distance between the edge in here to the edge of the eyeball, and the same in the other side, right? So it's like 24 and 12. So what I have in here, I mean, like I could have those eyes further apart a little bit more if I wanted, just to force to get like 64, precise 64 for an average in here. But we're talking about the averages, so 63 is not, it's something totally acceptable. But those distances are, cool to take note. It's like, so 24 eyeball, 12 for the iris, and then 64, around 64 for distance between the irises, the pupils. But at the same time, you have to count that you have to have that rotation already in there, right? So that's how we're going to start doing our, it's like basically like putting together like the real world proportions for the eyes and the face, right? Now, remember yesterday when I was mentioning, for example, when you're doing drawings, right, and you're learning how to draw the face, you have like 3 eyes, right, like one side by side. So basically, like it's one eye corner to corner, so the very corner of the eye all the way to the corner of the caruncula, right, which is this little membrane in here, the tear duct in there. So all the way from the corner to corner of the eye, it is actually an eye distance that they are counting, and that's basically what they are considering when you have an additional third eye in the middle. So basically, like, it's going to be like corner to corner, corner to corner, corner to corner, right? But when you talk about the eyeball itself, you see there's a huge distance between them, right? I would say like it's almost like, if I can measure, let's measure it. I don't think I measured before, so let's try. Create. Let's do a create measure tools, distance tool. Let's do like it's gonna be kind of like not a precise number, but let's see how much we get here. So 6.5 millimeters, right? So yeah, interesting. So it's kind of like half of the size of the iris, right? Like if you consider that, a little bit more than half of the size of the iris, that's the distance between the eyeballs in there, which is kind of interesting. It's going to grow a little bit, obviously, if I grow this number here from 63 to 64. So this, you should get a little bit bigger than that, but yeah, very interesting. So let's just delete that. Let's see, let's delete this guy. And then let's proceed with this. So now I have my eyeballs in there. They should have a correct proportion. Again, we're not talking about the anatomy of the eye just yet, because you're going to go through all the objects inside. Like when we get to eyes, you're going to see all that stuff, how it's sculpted, like the iris itself. I just use a disc instead of like a full-on thing. And then for Jessica's eye, I actually did a different approach than this one, which is basically like I actually extruded inwards this whole geometry here to create a little bit of a wall, because that wall is important for the refraction. So in her case, I added that little wall, so the cornea has a little bit of a thickness instead of just being like a single-sided thing. And I also added a little bit of a bubble inside to simulate the liquid contained inside of the cornea, right? So the anatomy is going to be a little bit different from this one here. This one is from Stan Winston model. Now, since we are here, let's bring those models first, the ones we just exported. So let's go to import. If you didn't do it just yet, make sure that you have, when you click OBJ in here in your file type, right? So you're gonna go import. So file import, click the little option box, right? And then switch to OBJ. And then if you scroll all the way down, if you never did this before, Maya by default has multiple objects on. You're going to switch to single object, otherwise it's going to break down your model into polygroups, and then the topology is never going to match when you send back and forth from Maya. So that's important. So click on single object, you can just say like save settings, right? And the next time should be fine. So we just need to do this one time, and the next time should be fine. So I'm going to click import. I'm going to go back to my OBJ folder. Gonna bring the eyes first. And it should be like in a very weird position. I don't even know where they are. Let's look at my outliner here. Oh, they're very tiny. They're right there, right? So that means we're gonna have to grow them a lot. And then let's bring the face as well, import. And then the head. Should take just a little bit longer. It's about 1 million, so let's see. So what I can do here, I can just select both. So like control, so eyes and then the face. You can do like a control G to create a group if you want, right? So now they are grouped. And now I'm gonna scale them. Have something around that size. And then I can move up if I want. I just want to capture the size first. So let's do this. What I can do, actually, I can hide this guy. I can only see the eyes. So just gonna scale it. And then let's bring it back. And remember the eye size was an estimate, right? When I put it yesterday in the model, it was an estimate. So it was pretty close estimate actually for how much I eyeballed like straight away. It should be a little bit bigger than actually a little bit smaller than what I did. It got a little bit bigger than it should. But I want to see if I can get at least like, you know, side to side, like the same size. So around here, again, we are dealing with averages, right? And so we don't need to be like absolutely precise. We just have to have a ballpark. So around here, you should like, it looks like the distance is correct. It's just like that we have them a little bit bigger than they should, right? So just unhide the head now. So we have the head in there. And let's hide the eyes we just brought. So this would be the replacement eyes I'm gonna be using, all right? Probably like I can bring a little bit, the eyelids are gonna have to correct to wrap around them a little bit better, right? But I think it's a good estimate in there. So let me do this. I'm just gonna bring the head now. So it's gonna be head and the eyeballs themselves because I don't wanna deal with I can bring the carunculus if I want to, but yeah, let's ignore the carunculus for now. So just the eyeball is gonna select now because I wanna make sure when I bring to ZBrush, I'm bringing some better topology for the eyeballs just because of the bulge in front, right? But don't worry about that. If you have just like spheres, it's fine. It's just because I'm here, I'm just gonna bring it like this. So now I have those objects in there. Let me do this. I'm just gonna, actually, let me just copy those eyeballs. So Control D. And now I'm gonna group with this guy. And you see like the eyes themselves are in the base like against the plane in here. So they're like at 0 right there. But it's optional to you guys if you want to keep it this way. I normally try to bring the head over that. So I'm gonna bring the head over that. Actually, look, it's bringing the, I select a locator in there by mistake. Where is it? That's the locator. I thought I selected just the eyes, but where is it? Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just for me to export anyway. So just gonna bring it up. And I'm gonna put like the entire head a little bit over the plane in here. Again, it's up to you, I mean. If you're sculpting a full body character, you're probably gonna put the feet, right? Like right against the floor plane. And then the head would be all the way up there. But in our case here, we're sculpting the portrait. I mean, I don't even need to do what I'm doing here, but it's just like because I'm a little anal about it. So I'm gonna keep the head over that. Just because, you know, it's like in the future, if I want to 3D print this, maybe I want to have it like against the plane, you know. So I'm gonna do that and bring it forward a little bit as well. Actually, let's keep the eyes in the same. Okay, just around there, it sounds good. So let's do this. Let me delete this guy here. And then delete anything that's not the eyes. Oh, I got a bunch of things there. I thought I selected just the eyeballs. So let's delete this. There's another locator in here. Just want to export just what's important. And then I'm gonna just select those guys, this guy, and then Alt H. Basically like unhides just what you selected and everything else is hidden. So that's all I need now, right? So it's scaled. I have some eyeballs in there. So I'm gonna do this. It's important to basically like at all times when you're exporting stuff, by default, Maya should freeze on during the export, but I don't trust that much. So I normally tend to do that manually. So I have like this custom shelf in here in Maya. And basically like everything I'm gonna do, you can find here in modify. So like modify, you can just go to reset transformation and then freeze transformation. First you do a freeze transformations, basically like all the rotation, translation, everything, right? And then after that, you do the reset, like freeze and reset. So my freeze and reset transformations are right here. So freeze, right? And then reset. So now it goes back like to the center of the, it should go to the center, but because it's inside of a group, it's not gonna go. So what I'm gonna do is select all the objects. I'm gonna press Shift P, like Paul. So it's basically like bringing everything outside of that group. And now if I do the freeze and reset, it should go to the 0, 0, 0. Okay, so now it's in a good spot. So let me select just like the eyes first, and then I'm gonna export them. Export selection, I'm gonna click the option box, OBJ. I'm not gonna check anything here, just gonna send straight away. Probably like one of the eyes should be flipped in ZBrush or not, maybe I already have them set up. If it is, we can flip in ZBrush, I can show you how to do it. So I'm gonna export that, and then I'm gonna bring as an OBJ eyes ref 2. You can even put like scaled like that, so I know what I did. And same for the head. So head's gonna go export selection. It's gonna be head ref 2 scaled as well. So now that we have them exported, still exporting, just a second, okay. And then let's go back to ZBrush. And let's bring first the head, because the topology is going to be the same. So I can just import straight away, right? So just going to click import, ref scaled head. That should pop in a different place. All right. And now for the eyes, let's bring them as a separate subtool here because it's not the same topology. So let's just click the star, import, and then eyes 2 scaled. Okay, and now let's go back to our guy and then go to append and select the scaled, this guy here, right? So they pop right in the right spot, right? So that's all we need. Now I can delete this one. That's the old eye we had. I don't need that anymore. And let's show both of them. So if sometimes, you know, it's like you just like mirror the eyes in Maya and you brought them in here and they look flipped. Sometimes one of them is flipped. For example, like if I do this, right? And let's just simulate that in here. Let's flip this guy. So that's basically sometimes, you know, it's like if you create like a copy in Maya and you just like flip them, and then sometimes you bring to ZBrush, it comes like this. One is flipped and the other one is not, right? If you have double other display properties in ZBrush, if you have double, you don't see the difference, right? But if it's off, then I was like, okay, I have to flip that geometry, right? So to do that, you just like hide the other one and you just click flip in here. Oops, flip. And then you unhide and it should be fine. So that's it. Let's get that guy. And subdivide one so it's a little rounder, right? So I can see the eyes now. And now from this point on, I can consider this proportion here correct for me to start working, right? But one thing I didn't mention in there is because we didn't mention like the measurements of the head. So let's go back to Maya for a second. And let's measure the height of this head that we just scaled up. Because I already had the eyes in the correct proportions and everything, but we didn't speak about the height of the face, right? So let's do this. Let's create like a measurement tool here. So create measure tools distance. I'm gonna click around the chin right there. And then around with pressing shift, so it creates a straight line around here. See, like I can bring it up so I can stop right here. That should be the top. It gave me like a 20, basically like 24. You can see that 239.54. So that's a 24 centimeters height. So another link I had up here was exactly that. So the eyes, let's go back to the eyes here, right? The size of the pupil size in relation to the eye size, right? So like I said before, 24 and 12, right? So eyeball and then the iris itself. And the average height of the human head, there are a bunch of documents you can find. This is the first one here that pops, like 9.4 inches for the, you know, for the, this is a female, right? And then for the male, 9.4, it looks like the same here for some reason. Okay, well, 99 percentile. Okay, that explains it. It's not average then. So like the high percentage of for female is like this, like the average for male, I guess. So 23.9 centimeters, right? Which is basically like what we have here. So that's an average height, right? If you want to see in inches, you can click this little button here in Maya, right? Animation. It says like animation preferences, but it's actually all preferences, right? This guy here. Or you can just go to Windows and then Settings and Preferences and click Preferences. It goes to the same spot, right? And then you're gonna find right here in the middle, it says Settings, right? So if you click Settings, you're gonna see like by default, my Maya is set to millimeters. If I switch to centimeters, you're not gonna see straight away the difference there. You're just gonna see that my grid's gonna change the sizes, right? So you see like it goes from the very tight grid to a bigger grid like that, but the values are not showing any difference unless you actually save it and then you go there, refresh a little bit. Actually, this one is in yeah, this is like it's centimeters now, so it's like 23.95, right? So let's go to inches now and let's see what happens. So inches, and then I save. Now it's 9.4, which is exactly what that paper said, right? So make sure that you have the correct values in here. Make sure you don't mix the two, you know, it's like inches for centimeters. So if you're dealing with inches, you should have about like 9.4 to, you know, if it's a bigger head, like up to 10 inches tall, right? But if you're dealing with the centimeters or millimeters, right, make sure that you have around either 23.9, which is like 24 centimeters height, or 240 millimeters height, right? Make sure you get those values correct because that's going to be very important for the world scale stuff. And especially when I pass all the settings for the skin shader for you guys, if you plug those values in there and you have the wrong scale, your model probably going to look like a candle. It's going to look like super, you know, translucent and everything. So now I have the scale correct in here, and I can keep sculpting now for the next day or so. Tomorrow we're going to be actually projecting all this detail into a base mesh. Like I said before, you can either use that base mesh that I provided to you guys that, you know, it's like not great. It has the UVs and everything, but it's not a great, perfect base mesh, but it's totally usable for the class, especially after Roger helped me to fix the file. There you go. But then if you have a base mesh that's your go-to base mesh, by all means, just use that. You know, it's like something that has a better topology that you trust, right? Now, let's talk a little bit about actually, let's do this tomorrow. Let's talk about the planning of the base mesh tomorrow. Let's do that. But today, actually, if you have time today, we can do this today as well. So I'm just gonna save this guy here without my undo history at this point. To save space in disk. I'm gonna save under my ZBrush, and this is gonna be native. I'm gonna put like scaled. That's a new series, scaled 1. So I know I can trust this guy because it's scaled to world scale, right? So anything I do now, even like I can trust the lens is better, right? So if I switch to 50, it should work better at the world scale than having a tiny little model, right? That you cannot trust that much. So, but I still don't trust the camera in ZBrush, period. So I'm gonna still trust Maya the best for that kind of stuff, for likeness and all. So let's go back to Maya. And let's do a little introduction here to lighting, right? Like in some of the settings in Maya in general, a lot of you guys already are familiar with Maya, but there are many students who before we start those classes, they ask, you know, it's like, do I really need to know Maya? You know, it's like, and I said, you know what? I'd rather you to learn ZBrush and have like a very good knowledge in ZBrush, because Maya can go through stuff and give you some basic stuff that actually can help you to start, you know. So that's what I'm gonna try to do now. So be patient if you already know this stuff, but just a little introduction so we are all at the same level here. So you saw like when I opened my Maya, the only things I did here was basically like bring the new object, right? But I didn't talk about camera. I used the measurement tool here. I show how to use and the create, right? The measure tool, distance tool. But I didn't talk about cameras or anything. So let's do like some basics here on Maya first. To access the camera settings for Maya, the first thing you have to do, you can click view in here and you can say select camera, right? As soon as you do that, you see like there's the attribute editor just popped in here. If it didn't pop by any for any reason, for example, you have a custom interface loaded, you can always press Control A to force it to load. So like if I have this stuff like closed, by pressing Control A, this interface is going to show right here. So those are the attributes of the camera, right? By default, the camera is 35 millimeters. So obviously, if you're doing like a full body shot, it should be just fine. The head's not going to show a lot of distortion, right? It should be fine. As you get closer and closer, you're going to start seeing more and more distortion, right? Up to this point here, the ears basically completely disappeared, right? So you cannot trust the camera like that. Even at 55, which should be like close to what the human eye is in terms of lens, right? Is still distorted, right? Like you can barely see the ears if you get really close. Like it's the same thing, you know, it's like you have a face close to your face. As you get closer and closer, you're going to see more and more distortion. And then obviously you're not going to be seeing exactly what's going on around because you're going to be a little blurred and defocused, right? But definitely the distortion is going to start to wrap around as well. So that's why I say, like, you know, it's like if you're doing like a waist and up portrait, then you can use a 50 millimeters, right? So you should have a decent proportion and distortion. Now, if it's a closer shot, for example, like head and shoulders, then I would use like an 85, right? So it would be a little bit more like this. So it's a little bit more natural looking, right? But now if I want a close up of the face itself, a full on close up, like eyes to chin or something like that, then I would rather use like 100 and have something like this, you know, so the ears are still visible, right? But it's totally up to you. I mean, like sometimes you want to force that perspective. You just have to be aware that every time you force the perspective, for example, if you have an 85 here, right? As you get closer and closer, the nose is going to get bigger and bigger and create more distortion, right? So what we're trying to do here is actually counter this effect and just like keep the nose a little bit more natural looking by using that. So that's the first step. So it's basically like tweaking our camera for whatever we're going to need. Since I'm going to be doing a couple of renders from this distance, I think 85 should be fine. Or even 90, you know, you can use 90 there. Something around there. And then if you keep scrolling down in here, you're going to notice there's a bunch of different settings you can use. You can bring, for example, image planes. You can go to environment and you can create an image plane. So basically you can bring an image, you know, actually for each one of the cameras, you can have a different image plane. So you can have like in wireframe, and then you can actually tweak the edges and match perfectly, right? Use a blueprint if you want. But that's not what I'm going to do during this class at all. But that's where it is if you guys need to use it. The depth of field is here, but we are not going to use this one either because they're going to go straight to Arnold, right? It's going to, from this point on here, I'm going to go straight all the way down. And they're going to go to Arnold. So under Arnold, there are a couple of interesting things in here. There's this filter map, which is basically like you can plug like a texture in here to create some effect in your lens. If you go to the manual, for example, of Arnold, you can see that you can plug, for example, a circular ramp map in there to create like the vignetting cut effect. So you get like a little darker around the edges. I rather do that more like in post-processing. There is a couple of plugins that I use. I'm going to show you. But you can do this straight out of the render if you want. You know, so you could definitely plug like a circular ramp, just like darker around the edges and white in the middle, and you should do the same thing. And the depth of field is going to be right here, right? Very easy to use. I'm going to show you as well, like how to, you know, to find out like the focus distance. So we can actually type the right number in there. And then you can simulate, you know, it's like the number of blades of your lens. You know, it's like if you're going to have like a 5 blade, for example, right? You can tell that when you have the depth of field and you don't have a lot of blade curvature, for example, then you're going to see the little hexagons, right? Like in the depth of field, like the little blurred hexagons and, you know, 6 sides or whatever, you know, octagons, whatever you're going to do. So it's basically controlled by this one. But obviously, if you're playing with the aperture, with the curvature, then it's going to get more and more buttery and smooth, right? So if you want that effect to have kind of like the star-looking stuff, then you're going to keep it 0. So let's play with those settings a little bit, but today. But before, we're going to introduce you guys to some lighting, right? So we spoke about the camera, where to find the stuff. Let's talk before lighting. Let's go to View again. And if you go to View, you're going to see there's camera settings in here, right? And one of them that I use is this resolution gate. So if there's no gate, you don't see anything, any mask in there. With the resolution gate, it basically shows you exactly what's going to be rendered, right? So this square here is going to be my render area. How do I define this to be a square, right? This is under the render settings. So this icon right here, display render settings. I'm going to click on it. And then if you scroll down the first tab that says common, you're going to scroll down where we remember, like in the first lesson, we defined like the frames and all that stuff and some of the basic settings. And we actually defined the resolution for Instagram. I mentioned like 900 by 900 that I rendered. So you can use that here, or you can pick a preset, for example, right? You can just say like, okay, I want to do like a HD. So in HD, basically that's what it is. Because I have this gate mask turned on, and also this one here, the resolution gate, right? So now I can actually see exactly what's going to be rendered, right? If I'm doing like an HD render. But in our case, we're actually not using any preset in here. I can actually use like a 1K square, right? Which is perfect 1024, but I'm using like 900 instead. Actually, for the purpose, let's do 900. It's fine. Keep 900, so I know that everything that's going to be rendered is going to be exactly in this frame here, right? There are a couple of things you can do with the cameras, which are cool. For example, like if you're doing like render tests, if you look at the way I render stuff, like to show on Instagram, I try to keep things a little bit more dynamic when I post stuff because I want to, you know, it's almost like someone is actually taking a picture of the person, right? So instead of like having a perfectly horizontal camera at all angles, I try to add a little bit of a spin in the camera, right? And I do this by going to View and then Camera Tools. I can actually click this little bar here to dock it. So I'm gonna undock it, right? So I have it there. And then you can use, for example, so let's see, the roll tool. So the roll tool, it does this kind of effect, right? So if you click and it's just like click and drag. So if I'm rendering something, instead of like posting something on Instagram to look like perfectly horizontal like this, sometimes I do a little bit of that, you know? So when I post, it adds a little bit of an imperfection. You know? It's like not a perfect shot. It's almost like a handheld, right? So tiny little things like that just to help with the composition, you know? Talking about composition, another thing you can do with the camera is like you can go to View and then under camera settings again, you can actually turn on this field chart. And then you can see, you know, it's like if you're into, you know, it's like making a composition or use like, unfortunately, it doesn't have like a law of thirds in here, you know, it's like it's not split in the 9 shape, but it has the center line you can use as a guide, right? So if you're comping, I mean, like sometimes you want to keep one of the eyes around the center area or something, you know, so you can actually use the field to guide you. And then let's say this is the first image I'm going to be rendering. I want to check like the 3/4, right? So at this point, we can do this. We can go to View, gonna click on it, select Camera again, and then you're gonna press, you're gonna check that I'm at the first frame, right? Gonna go all the way to the first frame here. You can click and drag, and then I'm gonna press S like Sam, and then you see there's a little red bar in there, and now I have all the transformation stuff here is all with red as well. So that means I created a keyframe for that, right? So I can go to frame number 2. Actually, you can see more frames. You can just click this one, click this little button in here and just drag it. You can actually limit the amount you can see in there, or you can just limit right here too. You can put like 1 to, let's say like 0 to 10, not 20. And then I can just bring this all the way up. So like 1 to 10. So 1 to 10, that's all I have. So if I click the second one, is easier now for me. I can just change the position and see something like this. So that's going to be my second frame for testing the lighting. A little bit from the top like that. And maybe I can do a little roll more towards, a little bit more natural, a little bit more boring like that. And then I can just go again, select the camera. So View, select camera, S. And then I have now the second frame, right? So I can keep doing this, go to the third frame and do like a profile. And for the profile, I can add a little bit of a roll again, maybe around there. View, select camera, S. Now I have 3 frames, right? So at night, if I'm doing like renders overnight, I can just go to my render settings. And remember, we tweaked this one to go from 1 to 10, right? You just put like 1, 2, 3. So from frame 1 to frame 3 is going to be rendered. But how do you render in sequence, right? Like in the past, we had to do the render bash thing in Maya, but thankfully they fixed that. So if you click modeling, and if you go to rendering, and you go to render, now there's an option here that says render sequence. So if you click the little square in there, the little option box, you're gonna pick the camera. I have perspective, matches the name right here, down here, right? The name perspective. So I know it's gonna render this camera. Make sure it matches, sometimes you're rendering by mistake something else. And then it says add to render view. So that means like if I click render sequence, not only is gonna render the entire thing to disk, following what I put in here, right? Like the name of the file. So this one is already, it's pointing to I. So I'm gonna just like change this one to native 1 or render 1. And because I already set the scene in the first lesson, right? Like it's going to the right spot. So Native American images and then native render 1. So not only is gonna send to this folder with the name in sequence, because we already did that in the first class as well. It's gonna also add to the render view. So that means like it's gonna put everything in memory so I can scrub through it in the render view here in Arnold. So it's pretty cool, I was like, but we're not gonna do this sequence rendering today, but just to show you how I do it, it's like overnight after, it's like you work a lot in your model, just like let it render overnight and check the renders in the morning. So let's go and do a little lighting here, because now, since we have a little scene put together that we're gonna save, let's do a save scene as, and we're gonna go back to where we have our Native American man, and then under scenes, right? So I'm gonna click this one and put like native render test 1. And then save as MB. Like I said, you can save MA if you want, but there's some incompatibility sometimes. So if you're gonna save one, save both. If you really need to save an ASC file, you want to edit, you have to save both, because the MB is more trustworthy, but it's binary, so you cannot edit it, right? So let's do that. And now, if you try, let's go and see how Arnold works. So Maya has its own render view, but Arnold has its own render view as well. So if you can go to Arnold and then say open Arnold render view, and it's gonna pop like this. The window is gonna look like this, right? So I have like some display settings. If it's not showing, you can just click the little gear and it's gonna show, it's like you can crank like exposure, gamma, you can change the view transform, like there's a couple of different presets in there, right? I'm going to keep a sRGB for now. And so this is the render setting. If I try to render anything right now, let's see what happens. It's not going to do much, right? We don't have any lights in there. Everything's a little, you know, up in the air. So see, like it showed the little buckets in there trying to render everything in black, right? So let's add our first light in here. And the first one, let's start simple with Arnold, and then light, and let's use an area light. So when you click that, you get the attribute editor already here, right? And then if you go further, you're gonna see my light is right there at 0, 0, 0 in the world, right in the middle, right? So the first thing I can do, I can scale it up. And because we are working like in world scale, if you have experience with photography, for example, and you have soft boxes around, you can even measure, you know, so I can see like, okay, how it's like a 2-foot soft box, you know. You can scale accordingly if you want. In our case here, I'm gonna just like keep it like kind of small. You know how lighting works in real life, right? Like if you have a very tiny source, you're gonna get very sharp shadows, right? The more you get, like the bigger you get with the soft box, for example, the softer the shadow is gonna get because the lighting is coming from all around this area, right? Like it comes from different directions and it ends up like fading a lot around the edges. So I'm gonna keep a little bit smaller right now. And the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna simulate that little Rembrandt light that we talk about in the books, right? Which is basically like creating that effect that is just like a triangle of light underneath one of the eyes, right? It's very, you know, famous because Rembrandt and other guys during the Baroque period, they used like either just like a candle light or whatever they had as a single source of light, right? It can be like a window or something, but it was always angled in a way that it was to create this effect. And the best way to do that is to get like close to 45 degrees. So I can actually nail here 45 on the dot. So 45 degrees, oops, 45 degrees. So I'm gonna bring it to the side like that, right? It's pointing towards him. And then I'm gonna bring from the front, same thing. I'm gonna bring it up. And I'm gonna do a 45 degrees. Let's see from this angle here, it's better. So 45, that direction, right? So let's see from here, 45, gonna be a minus 45 around here. And obviously this is like a precise number, but you can change to whatever, you know, works better for us. So at this point here, I have 45, 45. So, sometimes you can keep it close to the head, but then sometimes it's gonna get a little too hot if it's too close, right? So you can actually start playing with what distance is gonna work better. So at this point, we just have the light in there, but we didn't play with anything about like the exposure, right? Some people like to use the intensity. Some people like to use the exposure and just keep intensity at 1 and just use exposure to keep it like more like according to real world as well. For some odd reason, I use intensity and I don't use a lot of the exposure, but I think I should. So the result to me, I don't see a lot of difference, so that's why. So the first render you're gonna do here, you're probably gonna see everything is still pretty black. So let's see. Yeah, nothing much is changing, right? So let's see what we can do here. The first thing you're gonna do is this, there is a setting in here that says normalize. This normalize setting here, what it does is basically like it's more like a creative way of working with lights. That means that it doesn't matter how big or small, or like how much we scale your light source. This one, for example, remember I scaled it up, right? If normalize is off, it doesn't matter. It's gonna basically like respect the intensity and the exposure, but it doesn't matter if you grow or not. It's always gonna produce the same amount of light, right? So to keep it more like real world, I'm gonna turn it off first. It's gonna turn it off. And then I still have like the intensity very low, right? Also the samples, this is the number of samples of light, right? Like number of rays that are gonna be produced during the lighting process and they're doing render. So I'm gonna just use 2 instead of 1. That's the minimum I use, you know, like 2 just is a little bit less noisy. And then everything else is going to keep default for now. And let's try to render just the only changes we did was basically like add 2 samples and then turn off the normalize, right? Let's see if it does anything different now. Well, now we start getting a little bit better, right? Like we start seeing something. Not great because we're not tweaking anything too much, but just for the fact, like I'm gonna click normalize again. See, it goes black, right? I'm gonna check it. Now it's good. So I'm gonna keep it this way because this way, like I said before, if I have this light here and I start actually growing it, the intensity is gonna grow with it. If I go smaller, same, right? I mean, like if you're a photographer, you can actually, you know, it's like whatever works better for you. For me, it's almost like I'd rather have like a bigger light source because at the end of the day, when you have the soft boxes in a studio, all you're trying to do with the soft box is trying to simulate the natural light from a window. The soft light, they're developed to simulate the basically like the natural light from a window, right? So that's why you have sometimes those gigantic soft boxes that they basically like they put like right on the side of the person, you know, and then you get this beautiful soft light coming towards the face. It's to simulate that there's a gigantic window right there. So I kind of treat the same way here, you know, it's like if I need a bigger window, I know more light's gonna get in. So that's why I kind of keep that way. Now let's explore a little bit of the intensity, right? And the size. So same thing here. I mean, like if I have a small source like that, let's crank the intensity instead. So let's go with exposure. Let's see what happens. Let's put 1 for exposure. Let's try 50 for exposure. It's too much. Let's see, 20. 20 too much. 10 too much. Oh, okay. 5 it is. Let's see, 4. Yeah, like I said before, sometimes I normally use intensity, but I'm gonna try to force myself to use exposure and see what we can get. So I got like around 4 here, and my shader is very flat, right? Like I don't have any. Let's keep like putting my preset lens camera in there. So I don't have a lot going on in here because I mean there's a flat shader, right? We don't have anything fancy going on with it. But that's our first lighting test. So from this side here, you can tell that I kind of got a little bit from the get-go, a little bit of the Rembrandt light I mentioned, right? So there's a triangle right here on the cheek. Obviously, my model has a very flat face at this point that I have to add more form and more interest in there. But for the purpose of testing the light, I think it's a successful one in terms of like getting the Rembrandt light from the get-go, right? We don't have any bounce light. If you do not do any photography, at least get some books on photography to get some of the concepts about like one light setup, 2 light setups, 3 light setups, you know, and so on, because you can actually totally sell your model or totally kill your model by having a bad lighting, you know. So sometimes you can totally kill the forms of your model if you don't know how to model it with lights. So in this case here, I could play, for example, with a bounce light. I would add a secondary light on the side just to bounce that. I get a little bit more of the forms on this side. And I could use, like, for example, like a hair light if I had any hair in here. And I could use like a backlight. So with the backlight, I would reveal the silhouette better, right? Get a little bit of that nice silhouette, a little bit more bright. So all those things are, you know, things we can do eventually. But for now, just for this test here, that's our very first lighting setup, right? Just a single area light. So now I gotta go and I gotta add another different type of light in here. Since I have this one in place, it's called area light. I can just call it, you know, like a soft box 1, something like that. And I'm gonna hide it. Another type of light, and by the way, like we are at 10, close to 10:30. So you guys, please ask any questions. You know, I'm gonna keep like working, but if I need to stop to clarify anything that was not, you know, clear, just let me know. I'm gonna do it.
So Chris, I'm just gonna share a resource in the chat. Just in terms, I think it's a a Chinese photographer that has a photo studio, and he made a really detailed post on Facebook
Oh,
about
that's cool.
light placement and things like that with like
Mm-hmm.
examples. I'll just share that in a minute. I
Yeah,
just have.
please do. And if you can do that as well, like in the group, you know, it's like post the link in the group, then even the students from other classes from the other months, they can take advantage of that too.
Okay, I'll share it there.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and then the next type of light we're going to talk about here is the one we're going to be using the most when you're trying to achieve realism, right? We're talking about the HDRIs. So I'm going to go to Arnold again, and then under lighting, instead of using area light, I'm going to click in sky dome light. So click on that one, and you're going to notice it creates this dome, right? So pretty easy to understand. And the way we're going to plug our HDRI map is going to be using the attribute editor again. But before we do that, we have to know where to find them, right? So I posted the link in there, is in the class, you know, it's like in the introduction of the classroom. You're going to see the links in there, and there's a link to HDRI Haven, if I'm not mistaken, is there. So HDRI Haven, like that. So those guys have a ton of stuff. I mean, like, this is like the jackpot of HDRI, right? And it's basically free. You can just download them. And they ask for donations, right? So what I did to support the guys, because I mean, like, I use so many of their things, you know, it's like, it's always super high quality. I normally, I actually decide to donate to their Patreon like $3 a month, which is like very little, like $3, right? And if you do that, they give you access to their Google Drive. So you can go to the Google Drive, you can download the entire collection in a scoop, you know? So that's really cool. So, you know, those guys do good work. If you feel like it, just support them, you know? So if you go to those collections, they have like indoors, outdoors, and then if you click in any of them, they show, for example, like examples. So they have a render test. They have different resolutions all the way to 16K for the most part. And they have like a related. So basically, like if you get like something in a abandoned, you know, whatever, like house or old house, you're going to find like related stuff, or outdoors like lake, you know, so you're going to find related stuff with lake. So very cool. And then, but I cannot like tell you like use this one or this one, because it's very deceiving, right? Like the only way is to actually plug in your scene and then see how it works. I like to have like image like this, for example, for indoors with big gigantic windows. For that reason I mentioned, you know, it's like if I'm using softbox, that's exactly the type of effect I'm trying to achieve. And if you have the lighting coming from just one side of the room, for example, you can spin this around and it can create all kinds of effects, right? You can get more of like a backlight, more like a hero light, like in the side of the face or whatever, you know. And but the only way to know is downloading a lot of their stuff. So I'm going to show you one of them that I use the most here. There's a lab that I use a lot. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to click in the dome itself. And then under intensity here, I'm going to click this one, the little checkboard. And I'm going to go to File. And I'm going to switch off a couple of things. First, the filter type, I'm going to turn off. I don't use any filtering. And then for the space, you see it's set up like by default to sRGB. But anything that comes as a 32-bit EXR displacement map or HDRIs, they have to be set to RAW, right? It has to be set to RAW. But I'm not going to set to RAW. You're going to see this is going to switch automatically for me. I'm going to show you how to do that. So other than that, basically, like I'm going to turn it off, the filter type. I'm going to switch this one to RAW manually, or you're going to wait to see the magic in there. And the third thing is the Arnold. I turn off the auto-generate TX textures for the reasons I mentioned the first lesson, right? Like, I mean, like if you have enough memory and you don't want to have to reload and update the scene constantly and wait for Arnold to process and compress all those images, then you turn it off, you know, and then you're fine. So I have enough memory and I normally don't use that. So let's do this. Let's import one HDRI map. So to do that, you click the little folder, right? Click that one. And then let's go back here. Let's see if we can find under my HDRI collection. So those are the latest ones. Actually, I didn't classify, I didn't put them in place yet. They all came from the same spot, right? So I have like some previews in here, all from HDRI Haven, right? Some very cool ones, diffuse lighting like that. And then I have those indoors, outdoors. They're like in different, you know. So let's see, like big rooms. Let's see if it's under big rooms. Big rooms, nature lab. Yeah. So this one I'm going to show you doesn't come from HDRI Haven. There is a website that's very old that's called SIBL archive. So it's basically like it comes from hdrlabs.com, right? This is like, it's online forever. And you can download all those HDRIs for free as well, like 8K or whatever. And then if you keep scrolling down, there are samples from other people, you know, it's like you can download, for example, HDRI maps for your soft boxes. So you can create like a plane, for example, and assign them. And you can get like a simulation of a natural soft box or an umbrella, you know. So it's really cool. You can get some perfect reflections that looks like a realistic studio lighting. But if you go down here even further, you can keep going. There is under Rhode Island School of Design, there's this nature lab. And then there's a skeleton room as well. Those two are very cool. All of those are very cool. Those ones just add, they add a little bit too much green tint to the whole render, obviously, because there's a lot of green in there, right? But the nature lab, it has fluorescent lights inside, but it has gigantic windows, like natural light windows. So the light, for the most part, is it's a mix of like white light and green light, because the fluorescent light gets green when you take a picture, right? Have you ever tried to take a picture under fluorescent light? Like everything becomes green. So I downloaded from here. So let's use that one. So that's the Nature Lab, which is right here. Right, it looks like this. And I'm gonna get the one that's the biggest. So it's the reflection one, 6.5. And another thing that I forgot to mention is that you have to check the size of the file at all times, right? So for example, if Nature Lab here, I believe this one is a 4K map. So it's a 4K map, you have to match this around here. So I'm gonna click this little arrow to go back to the previous, right? Remember, like we are here before, and then we click this little guy to add the map, right? So to go back, you just click this one, you can go back. So the resolution, I have to match the resolution of the map you're using. So for example, if you downloaded an 8K, you have to put like 8192 here, right? If it's a 4K, it's 496, and so on. So in this case, here's a 4K. I'm going to use 496. I'm going to turn off normalize again. I'm going to switch samples to 2. And I'm not going to change anything at this point. Just going to render it straight away and see what we get. So we just turn off the other light. Did I plug the map in here? Is it there? I don't think I plugged it, did I? Yes, I did. Interesting. Let me see if I have to refresh my entire scene here. I think that's what it is. Weird. It's not actually rendering anything for me here. Let's see if I forgot anything. Density is showing absolutely. Oh, dude, I put it on intensity. It's supposed to be color. Sorry, guys. So I'm just gonna break it. I'm gonna add it here. Okay, sorry, it's under color. I'm just gonna do that again. And I'm gonna go to this guy and then color. All right, so let's go to Nature Lab, reflection. Okay, now it should be better. Okay, now I'm seeing it. And then you saw that I had selected here, it was sRGB before, right? And I said I have to change to raw. But you saw that when I imported this image in here, it switched to raw automatically for me. So how can you do that? There is a setting here. If you click this little setting box, that let's see if you go to, let's see if I remember now, under color management, right? So under color management, you can actually add types of files you want to import and what kind of like color space you want to assign automatically, right? So if I have an HDR map, or if I don't have an HDR map, I can just click add that extension, So basically like that's the extension right there, right? HDR. And then a pattern. So like you can just like selectively, add like a wildcard if you want. But in this case, we're going to use every single HDR map that comes in is going to be assigned the color space raw, right? And then you can save it. And then this is going to apply to every single map from that point on. Same for the XR. If I'm bringing in XR, it's always going to be raw. I can click, for example, here, add. And I can just do like an enter name and just put, for example, let's do TIFF. So if it's a TIFF, I can just assign, for example, TIFF, and I can just select sRGB, right? So in this case here, if I save it now, every time I bring a TIFF, you should assign sRGB, even if it's raw selected here. So everything is going to be automatic. So that's the way I did it. So let's see how this renders now with the HDRI from the get-go, like that. That's the first render there with HDRI, right? I just want to make sure that, it's like, I'm pretty sure some of you guys went through this whole process already, did a lot of renders I saw, but just make sure that all the other ones, it's like we are at the same spot. So actually, everybody's set to do at least a quick render, it's like between today and tomorrow with any model you have from ZBrush. You see, I'm not relying on displacement or anything. It's just the raw model is straight from ZBrush. But at least it's something for us to test, right? Now, you see like that my lighting here is very global, right? So when the lighting is very global, it ends up like washing out a lot of the detail, right? Let's make this a little bit more dramatic. And the way I can do this, we can do this. Look, I can just click perspective, and then I can click panels, right? Panels, perspective, and then create a new camera. So basically this new camera now I can play with and goof around with it without affecting the camera that's actually rendering right there, right? So with this in mind, I can actually look around and see where the light sources are. And you can tell that the windows I mentioned, they're gigantic right there, right? But what if I turn everything, for example, like if I click the dome and click E for rotation, or simply click this icon, right, for rotation. And then you can just click in here and just spin up, it starts spinning around. Now you start seeing a little bit more interesting lighting, right? You kind of get a little bit of that Rembrandt effect. And then at any time, obviously, if you want to go really creative with the lighting, you can actually twist it around, especially if you're not going to be showing the background. If you're going to do like a, turn off the background and just do renders, for example, you can actually spin stuff around and then pretend the lighting is coming from the top, So a couple of things you can do with lighting here. Okay, one of them is that, right? You can spin it around and put it in different positions, right? If you try to move it around, it's not going to move. It's kind of locked in place. But rotation is totally fine. And then I'm going to just stop for a second in here. And then let's look at the properties of this dome light here. So you saw that we have the properties of the intensity, all that stuff, right? But you're going to see if you scroll down here, there's the visibility settings. And this is a very cool and useful one. So I'm going to keep it rendering there. And I'm going to turn the visibility of the camera all the way down. And you're going to start seeing the background going more and more underexposed. So you can control that. You can go full black in here, for example, right? Or you can keep playing with it. I think this is very useful, for example, like with the lighting I did for Stan Winston. Let's see my Artstation here. Sign in. Let's see if I have it here, handy profile. So for this guy here, right? So this guy here, for example, so I have like a global light that's basically like that background that's in there. That's that HDRI. And I have a flashlight, which is basically like a area light that I turn like circular, and I put connected to my camera. So anywhere the camera goes, it follows it. So it has this effect of like flashlights, so it's spot on, right? But if you look at pictures like taking, for example, the red carpet, what happens when you have a flashlight is that basically like it exposes the focus, right? Like where the you're pointing to, and basically like underexposes everything else. So the background goes darker. Same when you see like macro photography, for example, you have like the little ring light, and you take a picture and the insect is completely focused and with the beautiful lighting, and the background goes black sometimes, depending on how you're photographing, of course. So the effect you can do is kind of like this, you know, it's like you just bring the visibility very down in here, right? And other things you might want to do, for example, you want the, let's say, the area light to affect the specular strongly, and then the global light not affect the specular that much. So you can just reduce this, you know, it's like the specular and control individually. So this way it doesn't affect the spec at all, but it's gonna affect all the, you know, the diffuse. So you can play with this like creatively, you know, it's like it's very useful. Now, since we are here, why not explore a little bit of the basics of the main shader for Arnold, right? Like the Arnold shaders. So I'm gonna do a lot of little things in here because I wanna make sure that you guys are set to do at least a little bit of experimentations with your models. And the reason why I insist doing this from the get-go, this is like the third lesson, is that once you have a scene pre-assembled, you can just iterate on that, right? So basically like tomorrow when you have a model a little bit more built, just bring back to Maya and just render it. You know, you don't need to set it up all again, right? You just have the same position and everything. It's just like, it's easier to just iterate with everything. But let's explore a little bit. So we went through camera settings. We went a little bit through lighting. So you know how to plug the HDRI and the area lights and tweak them and spin things around, right? But let's talk about the shaders in Arnold. So to access the shader, you're gonna have to go to the hyper shader. You can do this going to window and then render editors and then hyper shade. Or you can just click the little circle in there, little sphere. Okay. So I'm gonna click on that and it's gonna open this interface for me. And by default, it's gonna have, you know, sometimes you have a different configuration. You can, you know, play with whatever you wanna plug and have visible in here. So, and then this is basically like the materials that already came from the model of the eyes, right? I guess they are missing the iris texture for some reason, but I'm not gonna worry about it for now. Kind of looks cool that looks like he has cataracts or something. So let's create our first shader here. And we are not gonna go too anal about like doing the skin shader perfect today. It's just to explore a few things, right? So the way you create the shader for Arnold has one thing that's called like a Uber shader, which is basically like one shader to rule them all. Obviously, you have other shaders, right? You have like the ambient occlusion shader, you have a hair shader, but in terms of material, general materials, the AI standard surface is this Uber shader that creates anything. You can go from metal to skin, anything in between. So I'm gonna click this one, and it's gonna create this one here, the very first shader we are creating. And I can actually name it, let's say, skin. Let's see, native skin, right? Very suggestive name. And then I'm gonna click to assign it to the model. You can just click the model itself. And then you can go right here and then right click. And you say assign material to viewport selection. Boom, right? So now if I go back here, that's the shader, right? Like now it looks a little, it's white, it's pale in there, and there's, you know, it's like, it doesn't look that great. Let's do a couple of tweaks now. Let's pick this one back in here. I'm gonna click this little tab because I have the model selected, right? It goes straight to the attribute editor, and the last tab says the name of the skin I just added. So a couple of parameters here. If you wanna go like take some shortcuts, you can always click this button that says presets in here. And you have a ton of presets from Arnold, right? So you have balloon, blood, brush metal, bubble, car paint, all kinds of stuff. And you have one down here, milk, which is really cool to start, for example, teeth, right? You can start teeth with milk. And you have like a skin. And then there's an option here. You can either replace the entire thing with the neo shader, with the full preset, or blend like 25% of what we had before. So you can actually, you know, like blend a little bit with the shader that we had before. So if I click that one, it's gonna add like 25% of skin on top of this, right? So, but in this case, it's gonna replace completely. So I'm gonna do like a replace. And let's see how it renders from the get-go. It's not gonna look like skin like at all. It's very candle-like, right? Because we're not setting up the parameters or anything just yet for the thickness of the skin. But it's a good starting point, right? Like you get some color in there. At least you can see that the scatter is working. Sorry. So we're gonna go straight to subsurface here, this tab right there. And we're gonna play with the scale and also with the type. The thing is, like, if you have Maya installed and you never updated your Arnold, you have to do that, because the newest Arnold, not the latest, but the one before the latest, introduced this new algorithm that's called random walk 2, right? And the way to get the newest Maya is like this. So basically, you're gonna go to your, you can just type actually Arnold, actually solid angle Arnold update. So it goes to this Arnold downloads, right? And then obviously you're gonna need to have like an area membership, right? Like, so if you're registered in other area, even if you don't sign up for Maya or anything, you can still sign up for the forums and everything. And I believe you can have access to this. But yeah, so you're basically gonna click that one, and that's the version you're looking for, 3.301 for Arnold. So the way to install it is just download it, close your Maya, double click, install, open Maya again, it should be there. That's pretty straightforward. So I'm gonna switch to random walk 2, counting that you guys already have the latest, right? And it's if I render, it's gonna look a little bit different. To see exactly what type of difference it's gonna make, it's normally like for thinner surfaces, it calculates in a much more precise way. And if you go to the Arnold page I pointed the first day, like the manual online, you're gonna see exactly what's the difference in there. It's pretty cool, actually. It doesn't look like much when you render the skin like this, but the subtlety actually pays off, I think, at the end. That's what I've been using for a while. So first thing you're gonna do here, actually, let's go to that page, the Arnold page. Let's do like Arnold 5 menu. So the user guide in there, and let's go to the skin shader. So let's see, shaders. Let's see, Maya shaders, surface. And the occlusion standard surface. So they have a ton of information there. It's really cool. And then if you click in subsurface, for example, let's see what it comes up. It's a bunch of like realistic renders in there. It's really cool. And then there is one spot you're gonna notice here. They have like some presets, right? Ketchup, blah, blah, blah. There is one spot here that mentions the color of the scatter itself around here. When rendering skin, you should use a value like 1, 0.35, and 2. So like 1 for red, 0.35 for green, and 2 for blue. Basically, like that's the way it modulates and calculates the correct, you know, it's like I guess like a balance between blood and, you know, how, you know, I don't know exactly how they program the algorithm, but I've been using this value here for the most part. So we're gonna keep that in mind. So 1, 35, and 2, right? So I'm gonna switch this one here to that value. So to do that, I have to switch from HSV. So I'm gonna click the color, click HSV, and I'm gonna put like RGB 0 to 1. And I'm gonna do exactly what he says. I'm gonna keep 1, 0.35, and 2, right? For blue. So it's slightly different from what they had before. See, like that's the difference. It was orange, and now it's more like a peach color, right? But now I have to tweak my scale. So I'm gonna do, you see I have 1, the number we're going to be using is probably like 0.11, something like that. Now it starts to look much more natural, right? In Arnold, if you want to isolate just one area to render fast, you can just click this little square, this little blue one, and just like click and drag a little window like that. So now it's going to render just that little part. And we can check like the thickness. It should render fairly fast. Let's see. Yeah, you got the nice little scatter going on in there. So something around that number should be okay. Right. Now let's do a little. Let's switch this to something a little bit. Instead of like the subsurface color being this pink, since he's a Native American, right? Like I'm gonna go a little bit darker than that. So I'm gonna just go maybe a bit like that, and maybe a little bit more orange in nature, a little bit more saturated, just to get a little bit of that feel. Maybe I went too far.
Chris,
yes.
Sorry, Chris.
Yes.
I actually asked you this question on. I think I posted it today.
Okay.
When you're dealing with the skin color, and I know later on we'll be painting the albedo and all that. When you're dealing with a skin that has more melanin, like, do you just basically use the diffuse color, you know, in the skin the way you just did, you know, went from the peachy color and just tone it down to whatever you think the skin would be, and then underneath the diffuse color you would just use the same elements that you would have on all the other characters that you did, all the other portraits that you did, like the same like vessels and like lip color and this and that? Is it just like a colored layer on top of all the default stuff?
No, I think like in terms of the radius, I still would use the same, probably like this. If I'm not going to use a map for radius, if I'm going to use just like the like a common mix of blood vessels and fat tissue, I would use exactly the same color I just used right now, right? But I would play
for the radius.
Yeah, for the radius, and for and then this is if I'm going for something that's completely plain, right? But what I can do as well, sometimes I plug a map with a set of maps, which is basically like the same maps I'm going to be plugging for the surface color, right? In that case is where I'm going to put more melanin. I'm going to paint everything in the surface color, right? Add more variation, all that stuff. And then what I can do, I can duplicate those maps and plug them in the radius. And then I can colorize those maps to go more towards this color in here to add a little bit more variation, you know? So I have color plus the radius mixed in together, basically. But in terms of what you're saying, the color itself, I would paint like straight in the subsurface color. That's what I would do. Now,
okay, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Now, one thing that's interesting to observe is that I don't have, like, for example, an idea about like how different is the scatter when it comes like to different levels of melanin, right? We start digging about that, like I think it was the class of June, and the papers that I found, I actually pointed the students to. It's kind of interesting because there is like it's not only the color of the skin, it's like how the color was achieved, right? Like if it's a natural melanin occurrence, so you're definitely gonna have more scatter going on. But then sometimes you get like two people with the same shade, but then one of them is completely sun-tan and the other one has a natural color. And the sun-tan one is going to block more of the scattering because like it's almost like there's a microscab formed on top, right? So the light's not going to penetrate the skin the same way. So it's a little tricky because you never know. For example, in this case here with this guy I'm sculpting, it's going to be a little challenging for me because I cannot treat him like, okay, he's like a dude like us, you know, it's like just like stay in the office most of the time, right? He's probably a guy who is like his entire life in the sunlight, and his skin is probably beat up with that. So the level of scattering in his skin, I'm gonna have to be very careful because if I do too scattered, it's gonna look like it's like it's too flashy, and if I do too little of the scatter, it's gonna look like too leathery. So it's like you're gonna have to find that balance. So it's all about like, for example, like what your character is gonna be, right? If it's a character like let's say like is a warrior or someone, you know, it's like or a very old person who was like, you know, with the skin like baked from the sun, you're gonna have to be very careful with the amount to scatter, right? So I think it's gonna be a combination. In your case, like obviously you're gonna have to paint the color itself in the subsurface color, add enough variation. Try not to go too like pinkish with stuff. It's probably gonna be like a little bit more desaturated and more towards like purples and desaturated levels of I would say like a what like brown, purple, magenta, much less than pinkish, and you know, so like you can achieve those same variations, for example the lips and everything like that, but without going too saturated. Even like for the models I've seen that some of you guys are painting, I'm noticing like we have this tendency of saturating things too much, so like looks like the cheeks look a little bit too, you know, it's like it looks like a young little girl, you know, it's like it's a little, you know, kind of like a pinkish, and I try to avoid that. I add that, but sometimes I keep like I add some layers of very desaturated color, like I'm suggesting you to do. You know, it's like kind of like pick some grayish, desaturated magentas or something, and just spray on top of it, just to kill that intensity, you know, a little bit. You know, but since I'm gonna be dealing with this guy here, who has a different type of skin tone, we're gonna be learning together, and we're gonna come up with something cool.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be mostly in the subsurface color, but definitely the amount of subsurface is gonna play a role as well.
All right. Thank you.
No problem, man. So at this point here, that's basically like a quick render we did, right? Like it's a scene that actually I already can see the character a little bit, so I'm gonna save it, and that's all I want you guys to do. You know, it's like whatever model you have at this point, if you can do what we did today, you know, it's like put in a little scene and do a little render in there. So that's the only way to evaluate the forms, right? Like I can tell, for example, like here, that a lot of stuff that I thought it wouldn't work from my ZBrush by looking at this is actually working better than I thought in here in the render. So I'm gonna be basically like basing any changes in my model now in this reference. So basically like anything I do concerning likeness, for example, if I'm sculpting likeness in ZBrush, there is one point that I go as far as I can with what I can see here, but then there's a spot that was like, you know what? Now I have to actually move on and trust a natural camera lens, and that's what I'm going to be comparing to my references from this point on. So if I compare this to the reference and I see that the nose needs to be in a certain way, I'm going to use that mental blueprint to go back to ZBrush and tweak just enough to get that effect. But I'm not going to be trusting that ZBrush. Okay, it looks too round in here. I'm going to make it chisel, you know. If I'm looking in here, it looks correct. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm okay with that, right? So kind of like always use your actual render to compare. And the best way is to actually have like we have now, you know, it's like an HDRI map plugged, because that gives you a simulation of an actual physical piece, right? And that's the best way for us to judge, especially like people who have like background in sculpture or makeup effects or whatever, you know, that's the way they understand the form, you know, it's like by looking at something under realistic lighting, right? So so that's the beginning there for us to start doing something. And then there's something else let's switch to that light, the single light, and see what we get. Before I do this, let me just save this one. So if you're doing any renders here in Arnold render view, you can always save your little render tests in there by going to render, actually to view, and then say store snapshot. Now you're gonna see down there that's stored, right? So anytime I can retrieve that, so I can keep doing like different iterations in here and then retrieve it at any time. So I can just like click at any time, just add another one. So view, store, snapshot, it's gonna add another one. So now I can switch between them, right? And then if you uncheck it, then it goes back to the actual render. And another thing that happens sometimes if you're importing maps constantly, doing different iterations in the same day, you just import a bunch of displacement maps, but you already had some displacement maps plugged before and you're doing renders with them. Sometimes Arnold it doesn't refresh, you know, it's like, so you have to force Arnold to refresh to be able to see the results. I noticed that our machines at work, for example, they are Linux machines, and the refresh happens almost automatically every time. And a Windows machine, for some reason, you know, it's like doesn't refresh. So if that happens, for example, like you're bringing new maps with different colors, and you're not seeing any difference in those iterations, you can just go to render, and you just click update full scene. If you do that, it refreshes all the caches, reloads all the textures and all that stuff. So that's the tip in there. So let's just store this. And then to delete, obviously, you can just select the other ones and then press del, delete. And then I'm gonna keep just that one for now. And let me switch to my single light and see what we get. So we're gonna hide this one. I'm gonna unhide this one. And again, if it doesn't render, you can just refresh the scene. Let's do this. Oh, that refreshed. That's good. So now, I mean, like depending on the angle, obviously, you're going to see more of the subsurface effect or less, right? So at this point here, you're getting some nice stuff in there. But I think the best way for us to see the subsurface around the nose area would be if we switch to frame number 3, which is kind of the profile from the back, right? So now you can see the little halo in there, the redness around there. You can see how sharp this line is. I'm gonna have to soften it. But at least it's cool to measure, you know, it's like how much scatter you're getting. Sometimes like if the nostril, if you sculpt the nostril and you kept like this area here very, very thin, I was like, between this little wall right in the middle here is too thin. Sometimes like it gets very translucent, it gets like almost like a candle. So it's a nice way to track as well and see how much more volume you have to add to it, right? So that's a good way to measure as well. Kind of like you can get the camera a little bit below. See from the front in here. So from the front, you can get a little bit of the feeling of the ears and all this stuff. Obviously, that number I gave you guys, 0.110, it's flexible, right? You're gonna be feeling according to your model. If you feel you know, it's like when it comes to skin to me, and the entire approach to this classes to me, it comes down to personal preference to me. You know, it's like I wish I was being more scientific with everything I do, but I'm not. Other than like measuring the eyes and all this stuff, I try to be correct with that. But in terms of skin, I go a lot by feeling. You know, it's like sometimes I feel like, oh, it should be less scattery than this, and then I was like, you know what? I like the way it is. There's something about style in there, and I keep that way. You know, so I kind of like. So it's up to you guys if you want to exaggerate the scatter a little bit more or reduce it. Also take into account what I said about like the sunburn aspect of things that gonna make it a little bit less scattery, it's more leathery, right? And another thing you can use is this. Check this out. Under the skin shader here, we spoke about the subsurface. We set up the scatter, right? There is this other setting here, which is basically like you can increase the back scatter or front scatter, right? So you can actually, yeah, let's do the rendering here in real time. Let's get just the ear, for example, and see if we're gonna see any difference right there. So now I'm bringing this down, right? See, like there's not a lot of front scatter going on in there. Oh, it became like almost gel, right? So there's a lot of front scatter happening right now. Actually, the best way would be to measure from behind. Maybe like we can switch back to our frame number 3 and see the nose in there, for example. Like, so now I don't have a lot of back scatter going on, right? But now I have a ton of back scatter going on right there. So you can play with that, you know. It's like I don't remember, like in the previous class, I was actually cranking a little bit of the, I believe it was the front scatter I was adding more to. So it's probably like in that case, I would have to, you know, increase, oops. I'm gonna have to basically decrease it here or something like that. But I'm gonna have to check. There is one day that we're gonna go through the entire shader network, and then I'm gonna show exactly what my settings are, and then we are not gonna be guessing. This one is just like, just for you to start doing something, you know. I'm gonna keep it 0 for now. And another thing that's interesting here, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to recap what you just said. So if you were doing if you were sculpting the entire body, would you have different values of backscatter at different parts of the body, say the hands, or would you still use the same amount throughout would it be the same shader for the entire body?
You know, it's like I'm very happy with the way that it works by default. You know, it's
Okay.
like if I have a setting, for example, I don't modulate, for example, like the anisotropy channel. Basically, like I don't add any maps to it. Either I set it up like with more or less backscatter and leave the way it is, or that's basically it. It should work across the board for the rest of the body. It's a very
Okay.
great algorithm the way they programmed it. It works really well, like for micro detail and for macro detail as well. Another thing is it's about this, I forgot to mention. You see, like I have this weight in here that's set all the way to 1. So that means like it's going full on subsurface scattering, right? So if I bring it down, look what happens right there. So now what's happening is actually it's ignoring the subsurface scattering and is giving priority to the diffuse. So if you have the diffuse in here set to any color, for example, if your diffuse is, let's say it's green, right? So you have a green color in there. Basically what you're doing, if you crank this one all the way to 1, you're going to be overriding that. So it's going to go full on scatter again, right? So all that matters is just what's in here. But at some point you might want to mix things, right? To create like a little effect, like, has a little bit of a Hulk going on in there, right? So either you can do that by plugging some green maps here in the subsurface color where you can mix with that. But when you mix with that, you're actually losing scattering, right? So basically, like the way this works, I could, for example, reproduce this color I have for my color of the skin, right? So I have that skin color. I'm gonna plug the exact same one here. Maya is very smart because if you click any of those colors, it memorizes as this spot right there. So if I clicked on it, now if I go here, click this one, if I click the first little square, that one, that should be the exact same color. So that means that now I have this exact same color that I have for the scatter plugged in the base of the diffuse. The difference is that I can control how much subsurface I can get. So if I go completely without subsurface, it's the same color of the skin, but no subsurface, right? And then you can start increasing. I suspect that this is a good way to do exactly what we were talking about. It's like if the skin is a little bit beat up by the sun and doesn't have a lot of scatter, for example, naturally overall, right? Then you can actually play with mixing the diffuse with subsurface. But in general, if I'm rendering something like this, right? This is full on scatter. I'm not actually playing with any diffuse. This is like full on 100% scatter. So this is gonna go to 1 like that, right? But I mean, like it's a way you can play with, right? You can actually add a black and white map here to control how much in what areas you're gonna get more or less scatter, right? Let's say like if you paint black, you're probably gonna get something around this. If you paint like full on white, you're gonna get something like this. So you can pick and choose the areas you want to do it, and you can control that. I normally don't do it, like I said, like it's straight away like the same shader, very simple shader network. You're gonna see when I open the whole thing. Yeah, no mystery at all. Like it's all about like the way you sculpt the displacement maps carefully, and the way that you have the micro breakups in the middle of the scatter, the way you paint your specular maps and things like that. That sells the entire thing. But in terms of scatter itself, my shader network is super simple. It's like across the board, it's like a single thing, and it normally works just fine. So is this today, like, is this like something that's kind of clear for you guys? Like I think I tried to go like slow, but I mean, like I never know the pace, right? I guess like is it something helpful for you guys to start doing some renders today? If you didn't try, because a couple of you guys already start doing like, and you have a lot of displacement already done too. So, but yeah, like I'm happy to see at least like one of my own renders in here, because I'm always like on the fence, it's like, okay, is the model going okay? It's like, okay, it's going kind of okay. I know what I have to do now. So yeah, that's a good progress right there. Let's go back to this guy here. There was something else I forgot to mention. I mentioned before, but I forgot that I was about to do with this guy. What was it? Well, the render. I mean, a way I can do to remember is actually go to this page here and see what I had like in the previous, I think the June one, what I had for my program, and see if I covered most of it, because I want to keep kind of like track. So HDRI settings, dome blur, light cinema, first render test. Okay, so that we covered. Likeness, blah blah. And tomorrow we should be like projecting the sketch into model. Oh yeah, let's talk about this. So I just checked on my ZBrush, and I did download that ZWrap, right? That plugin that I mentioned to you guys. So if you just you can just search for ZWrap like that, and you're gonna find this Russian3dscanner.com. So I'm gonna be probably using this as a you know, to actually do the whole projection for me automatically tomorrow. If you want to see how I do it, like if you by any chance like you don't have access to the ZWrap, you could not download or something. In the past, like May, June, and July classes, if you go to the last lesson of each one of one of them, like the last lesson of the first week, I basically like I spend the whole night just like projecting manually everything, selectively, you know, like creating masks and projecting. So it's all there. But since this is something that's available for free, at least like for 30 days, and I'm still under my 30 days, you guys can do the same. Just download it, and we can use it tomorrow. You know, it's very useful, and then I can show you how I use it. I use like twice so far, but it's so simple. You know, it's like it really does a great job. So go ahead and try that. And another thing we can try as a group, and me as a teacher as well, is to try to get that for students. So let's see if we can find some prices in here. They have like students. Wrap is free for students, universities, and schools. So you can just like click that one and request a license, right? For now, I mean, like you can just download it straight away, since it's like a 30-day free, right? But you can also do this. I'm gonna do the same tonight probably, and try to get one for me as a professor or a teacher. And then yeah, and then if tomorrow we all set for this, you know, it's like, I guess let's see what they ask you here. File name, university, school. You can just put like fly on the wall and maybe the website or something. Just mention you put the website right there in the link, and then we can all try to get it. You know, if it doesn't work out, then at least we have for 30 days, so we can do that. And the way it's gonna work, you're gonna install it, and it's gonna show up right here, ZWrap, and then you can just click Start ZWrap, and we're gonna do the whole thing in there. The way it works is basically like this. You keep this model like sorry.
I just noticed one thing when you were looking at the website. I think the student version is standalone, not ZBrush plugin.
Oh, really? Let's see.
It seems like it to me. I haven't used it yet, but
yeah, let's see. Students.
Yeah, because here you see the icon is for wrap, not for ZWrap.
That's a good point. But you know what? Even if it is, I think it's fairly easy to just bring the models in there. We can do it. But I would be surprised if they don't have it. I know what you mean. Like this one is like the ZWrap for ZBrush, right? And this one is just the wrap R3DS wrap. Interesting. Well, we can try.
Probably it's easier in ZBrush because you don't have to export large files if the files are large already. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, we can try that, and then and I'm gonna try tonight actually use as a standalone as well, and see how difficult it is, because I know what you mean. Like I mean, like the convenience in ZBrush is that you just have to have one being a subtool of the other one, right? And it actually brings both at the same time, side by side, and then that's it. And I think if you have it standalone, I guess we're gonna have to import object 1 and object 2, and then that's basically gonna be the difference, I guess. But yeah, still we're gonna be able to do it. What I wanted to cover for today was covered. I can do a little bit more sculpting, or I can, it's like any questions you guys have.
So, sorry, just to interrupt.
Yeah.
But when you're finishing up the application for the wrap, at the end it has like a product tab, and then it says either Z wrap or wrap 3. And so you can choose there which one you request for free.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, so you can get the ZBrush.
The only thing is just like it does ask you for student or teacher ID. Which I have no clue what that is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like all those guys, they ask for this, right? Like it has to be like a recognized institution or something like that. But someone at the Unhide school mentioned that. I said like, but it's like, do you have to have like an actual school or something? And the guy said like, no, I just requested and they sent me an email with everything. I was like, okay, so we can try that too. But
yeah, I'm gonna give it a shot. But yeah, I don't think that most of the schools don't actually give you like a card or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like one thing you can put in the notes in there. I think you guys can point to the website, so it looks more official. Looks at least like it's an actual online school. And then, yeah, if they ask you, just like, oh, we don't have an ID.
Perhaps, Chris, if you do request it, you could also ask if they'd be willing to help your students, and worst case they might ask you for our name. And if you give them a list of the names in the group, when we contact them, and compare it to that list.
Let me do this tonight. I mean, like I can definitely send them an email and then actually introduce myself and say like, dude, I'm trying to get all those students hooked up every month and see what they say. I was like, so yeah, let's see. I can say like I'm friends with Putin, Just hook me up, guys. Oh, both me and my president are friends with Putin. We are good.
I wanted to ask you. I think when I was doing my model, I got the scale wrong. So I think for some reason, because my model is smaller, does it change the way the ZBrush, basically the way the brushes interact? Like even if I put the scale to the smallest size at the lowest intensity, I do feel that it has a bigger impact. And is that because my sculpt is
in terms of intensity, I don't think it should affect, but definitely like the size of the brush, it's kind of like you're gonna have to keep constantly like double clicking that dynamic. So if you double click it, right, you're gonna be able to see like it's like if I try to grow it, it's gonna reach a limit, right? But if I double click the dynamic, then it's gonna unlock. Then I can actually grow that again and have like a much bigger size. But in terms of the intensity itself, it shouldn't change unless it's something really bizarre, like you have like a microscope version of your model. But
because the size of the brush is not an issue, but it's the intensity. Even when I'm at a really low level, when I go to sub D, say 2 or 3, it does. When I use the clay build up brush, it does impact fairly more than, for instance, what I see when you use the brush, where you can sort of layer slowly.
Yeah, I'll also remember what I said in the first lesson as well, right? Like it's not only that I'm layering, I'm actually using the pressure of the tablet to yeah. But you feel like it's stronger, right? Like
like when I try to, for instance, just like add more volume to some of the fatty part, or just to create the different blend between the like fatty parts and stuff, it does pop up a little stronger even when I go with a very light touch.
That's what I'm saying. Like I mean, like it would be ideal if everybody was in the same spot with real world scale, right? So in your case, did you try to do that fix that I mentioned, like try to scale everything correctly, and then by baking everything and then reprojecting?
I did that. I did that in a previous how'd you call it? Like in a newer model. So it's not the one that's more advanced. It's a newer project.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try and perhaps use the new base mesh that you have, and use the demo of ZWrap to perhaps like scale it to the proper side, and then do the cuts like you said to maintain the
HD geometry,
the details.
Yeah. What I mentioned to him before is this. So for example, like he already went as far as putting all the HD geometry detail in there, right? And it's a well-known fact that once you do that, if your model is not scaled correctly, you're kind of screwed. So what happens is that if you reduce, like basically like shrink your model from that point with the HD in there, all the detail is going to be distorted. I mean, like either, it's like if you grow your model, the detail is going to fade away, right? So it's like, it's very tricky. So what I told him to do is this. You start with the model that has the wrong scale, but has the HD in it. So basically like you select just one small area and then go HD in that area, right? Like just make visible just one single area. And then once you are in HD there, then you can just click Make Polymesh 3D. So that bakes into a sub-tool that has all the HD geometry baked into it. Then you go to the next chunk and do the same. And then at the end, you're going to have like maybe like 4 or 5 pieces, very high resolution meshes, but at least you have all the HD geometry available, right? So you can put them as a background, like sub-tool, like a bunch of sub-tools as background. Scale up your model, like now, it's like a basically like select all of them, scale all of them to conform to the new model, so we have a correct scale now. And then the new model we subdivide HD, and then again selectively enter HD, and then you project chunk by chunk until we recover all the detail back to it. But it's a lot of work. It's just in case like it's an emergency. If your model really like you forgot something and then the scale is not correct, the best way is to actually pay really close attention, like make sure that you're using like inches or centimeters or whatever you call, but at least the proportion is correct according to the class today, what we spoke about, right? 9.4 inches tall for a face, right? Or 24 centimeters. And if that's correct, that should be fine, Another thing that happened as well, one of my students, he mentioned, is that for some reason, when he was importing the mesh, he was coming with a different scale. And then we tracked down, it seems like under the import and here in export in ZBrush, for some reason, the scale, there's a couple of numbers that are not matching there. I would say like stay away from this, never touch those import and export. The default stuff should work just fine. Because once you mess this one, it's normal like you have to start a brand new fresh scene and then bring your model to it. Because sometimes you cannot even find like what the right amounts are, It's like it can get very bizarre with this stuff. But that's kind of rare to happen. It just can happen, But yeah, so
Hey, Chris, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, about the eye, the outer cornea and the sclera. I'm kind of curious the distance between the two.
Oh, okay.
Is it like right on top of each other pretty much, or just like?
Let's do something. Let's open the latest one I did with my wife. The one yeah, because we're definitely gonna have an entire lesson that's gonna be just about the eyes, So we're gonna go through.
Oh, okay.
But because we have some time here, it's like let's do this. Let's just do a little preview. So let's see Jessica, and let's open this one. See the latest clean scene. That should do it. So I just saved this guy here. So and my wife, I got excited because she's actually she likes researching, it's like Native Americans and stuff. And she sent me a bunch of references of some guys she thought looked really cool. So I might incorporate some of those features.
Sweet.
Let's see.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something before about brush sizes. In Zip, you can scale the entire brush system under Preferences Draw. So then you don't have to uncheck dynamic and stuff.
Oh, cool.
If your model is at a weird scale.
That's interesting. Oh, what happened to her face? She looks like, let's see. She got some disease in there. Oh, it's orthographic, I guess. What happened to my cameras? All right, that's good. All right, so let's look at her eye right there. So let's get the entire thing. So go up and let's select the entire thing. So eyes. Let's explore this one here. So let's see what I have like in terms of components, right? I have my little caruncula. I'm gonna hide it for now. I have my little tear line right there, which is very simple. It's a little ramp, like a half pipe. And it's not even matching yet, right? I have to match like perfectly. But it's just floating for now. I have to find the time to finish all my models, but none of them are finished. So let's look at this. So for example, you see what I mean here? Like I extruded inward. So now it has a, you know, it has a little wall in there. That wall, let me see if I can find it here. I have a bunch of references for one of my other classes. So let's see, workshops, unhide, and then okay. So this one should have a bunch of things here. So let's see if I have, I think this one here is a good one. It doesn't show like the actual thickness in there, but I believe it's like a 0.1. Is that 1 millimeter? I think it's 1 millimeter. But the cool thing about this one here is shows the index of refraction, you know. Because I was concerned when I was using just a single geometry to accomplish everything, I wasn't getting like, I think like the best result I could get. So I decided to actually extrude this and create the cornea with about, like, I think it's like 1 millimeter thickness. And then I added the index of refraction to 1.38. And then I created a bubble. I'm gonna show you, there's another geometry that's just a bubble full of liquid that has a different index of refraction of 1.34. And then the lens itself here has 1.41. But this one I ignore because I just have a void in there. So I'm not like too concerned about that. But having these two ones here before, the way I approached was simply like adding a 1.36, which was basically like an average, right? 134, 138, and I would call the day. But then this last model, I actually decided to go a little bit more accurate. And I think that's what I tried to do here. So the distancing here, I think that's what you're asking, right? Like the distance between the surface. I cannot tell you like a number. I don't have a number. It's something that I would have to do a little research actually.
No, it's cool. I didn't know if they were like riding really close or if it was really far, but this is great to see.
Yeah, what I have is kind of like, you know, reference like this that I can kind of see how much it goes forward. But it's mostly like a visual reference, right? Like not something I measured. But I love those pictures here. Those are really cool. When we start sculpting the iris, we're going to be looking at those type of, you know, it's very interesting. So let's go back to this guy here and let's explore a little bit more of this. So we see like this is the extrusion I have in there, the little wall. But then if I hide it, now I have a bubble in here and I made it flat in that area. It goes all the way, intersects with the actual, actual iris, right? So basically like that's the liquid that's contained inside and it has a different index of refraction. You can even look at here, let's see. Eye lens, let's see the index of refraction, 1.34, exactly what was in that illustration in there. And then I do have a little lens in here, but this one doesn't have anything, it's just black, right? And it doesn't even have like, it's not even a lens, it's just like a little shield in there. And then obviously I in the past I would sculpt everything and have the entire iris being part of another sphere that was inside of the sclera. But then I just decided to just like, you know, I don't need that because I'm going to be blending this with the ramp. So the ramp actually is going to go probably until here. You're never going to reveal this edge anyway. So I kind of saved some polygons in there. And then for the iris itself, as you can tell, I mean, like it has some resolution, right? Like if I click on it, it's like 53,000 polys. And I do this way because if I have enough support, I can actually use like regular displacement maps. Otherwise, I would have to go like full on vector displacement. And vector displacement can be a pain in the butt to set up. So I just kept it simple, you know. I sculpted in ZBrush and then just brought the mid-resolution mesh in here. It works really good. So yeah, that's a quick preview of the whole thing. But we're gonna definitely get into this whole thing, man, and explore all the shaders and all. It's gonna be sweet.
Did you make the liquid watertight to the outer to the cornea?
Actually, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is pretty much against it. I think the way I started it was actually
from the inside piece.
Yes, from the inside piece. It seems like there's a tiny gap in here for some reason, but I think what I did was exactly that. Maybe it's because of it's because it wasn't subdivided. With the subdivision, it's watertight.
Sweet, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I started like that and extruded and just finish it up. Yeah, it works really nice, man. I mean, like there's some a few artifacts I was seeing before. It seems like this one solves the problem, but you never know. You know, it's like you're rendering different angles and stuff, and sometimes pops in there, but some things pop in. We're gonna discover later on. But so far, I'm happy with the geometry the way it is. All right, guys. So today was pretty packed with stuff. I hope you know, it's like you know, you guys learned something, because I'm pretty sure some of you guys are doing those other lessons for a little while. But I'm pretty sure some of you guys were actually waiting to actually learn on the fly with me here. So at least like as a reminder, you know, it's like maybe you caught something that you didn't before when you're doing it by yourself. But tomorrow is going to be basically like trying to get this Z wrap working, get everything wrapped into a new base mesh. So it doesn't matter how far you are with your model right now. I would say like it has to be close enough to where you want to go with it. In my case here, I don't think it's close enough, but I have to keep going with the class, so I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to project this one into the new topology, and then I'm probably going to start playing with some proportions and stuff, probably tomorrow during class, like just like play some proportions and exaggerate some things and make it more stylized, I guess. But then I'm going to keep it completely symmetrical at this point. If you guys are sculpting likeness and you want to break the symmetry right now, I would say like just wait until tomorrow, until we have this projected into a natural geometry, so we can actually save a morph target or simply export an OBJ with the mesh and then bring it back at any time, and then have the asymmetrical version just like to mesh the likeness, but to have the symmetrical version completely ready for doing like the HD geometry detail and all this stuff that we're going to be starting next week. So tomorrow is going to be like a little bit more technical, just like projecting those things and getting more of the sculpture going. But then next week is going to be like when you're going to be really sculpting the butthole brush, and then start the whole process of HD geometry. That's going to start getting very, very difficult very fast next week. It's very interesting because you say like, okay, you just have to sculpt the pore and then everything going to spin from that, right? And it seems so simple in concept, but you're going to see how challenging it is, because the pore, if you do it too deep, it doesn't quite work. If it's too shallow, it doesn't quite work. If it's too, if the size variation is too big, it doesn't quite work. If the distance between them is too big, it doesn't quite work. If it's too close, it doesn't quite work. So like it's finding that sweet spot where they look like their network of, you know, it's like pores that are actually connecting to each other, and adding enough variation as well. You know, it's like it's a tricky one, because if you add too much variation, it can become a mess, and then you become, it's kind of hard to identify that as natural skin. And if it's too kind of like, you know, measured, kind of like, you know, it's like one here, like very, you know, it's like there's a cadency to it, it becomes too mechanical. So it's like a sweet spot between like randomness and precision, you know, and depth and all this stuff. So I'm going to try to cover all those stuff, those things like as I sculpt in real time, and I'm going to show you guys, okay, try to do this way, because otherwise you might get into this trap or that trap, because that's very common in every single class, man. You get like the most talented guys out there, and you see like, this guy's going to nail it straight away. And man, they have to redo it like 2 or 3 times to get the pores correct. So it's going to be fun. Thanks guys again. And I hope you're enjoying. I'm enjoying. And you guys are super talented, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get very inspired seeing the work as you guys start producing more and more stuff. So awesome.
Thank you, Chris. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Stop this
Bye.
video.
Bye.